What up? What is a good word? This is Htheman. You already know where you are. It's Real Talk Sports with your boy. Before we dive into it, we have breaking news that's happening right this second. Exciting news, ramifications galore across the board, especially when you take a look at what's going on in the draft with the quarterbacks coming in. We're talking about a quarterback. We're talking about that quarterback that's been talked about since the beginning of free agency. And that quarterback is Justin Fields. He has been traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's going to be for a 6th-round pick that could potentially turn into a 4th-round pick, depending on how much he plays. I love this move for several reasons. The first one, it shows that the Steelers are not being complacent. It shows that they're looking to amplify the quarterback position when they moved on from Kenny Pickett, sending him to my Philadelphia Eagles. We'll touch on him a bit later in this podcast episode. But Justin Fields getting traded to Pittsburgh, I think this is an ideal situation for him. He's in a great spot with an awesome coach. Mike Tomlin always gets the most out of his players. And also, he's not going to have the pressure of coming in right away and having to perform. There's going to be competition. There's no question about it between him and Russell Wilson. I'm not sure what the talks were with Wilson, especially after Pickett left. Wilson must have felt some type of ease knowing that he's going to go into camp with the fast track on getting the starting quarterback job. But the Steelers bringing in Justin Fields, this only amplifies the quarterback room, and it also creates that competition that they're going to need at the position. So not have that one singular mindset, right, that they had from a year ago, even the season prior, when Matt Canada was the OC after transitioning from being the quarterback coach and becoming the OC last year. It was very stagnant for Kenny Pickett. His development was tremendously flawed across the board. But now they clean house, bring in Arthur Smith, and get Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields matches what Arthur Smith wants to do as an offensive coordinator. You know, the Steelers want to run the football. Justin Fields comes in and allows them to continue to do that, not only from a throwing standpoint, but from a running standpoint. We know what Justin Fields is capable of doing. This is just a tremendous asset, tremendous value at the position when you think about what they already have in the quarterback room. I know a lot of people are talking down on Russell Wilson and what he's capable of doing right now in this stage of his career. But just think about this. Justin Fields coming in with the talent that he has to push Russell Wilson in camp. And this is going to get the best out of Russell. It's also going to get the best out of Justin Fields. Justin Fields has never really had anyone push him in terms of competition from behind. And now with him being in Pittsburgh, along with Russell Wilson, who signed a veteran minimum 1-year deal, with the Broncos being on the hook for the other $37.5 million that they're going to have to pay him. I think this is a great value at the quarterback position. It creates competition, and it also shows that the team is really trying to make a push. They already got tremendous pieces there, even though they traded away Deontay Johnson earlier in the week to Carolina. They still have the formidable George Pickens, who I believe is going to take that next leap and bounds, especially with Russell Wilson there. If it doesn't work out with Russell, Justin Fields will be that guy. And you take a look at what they have in Pat Freiermuth, what they also have in that offensive line, who played really well towards the back end of the season. I expect for Justin Fields to come in, challenge for the starting quarterback role. I think Russell Wilson is going to get the best. We're going to get the best version of Russell Wilson in what he is right now in his career. We're not talking about when he started at Seattle. We're talking about who he is right now. Don't forget, Russell Wilson passed for 26 touchdown passes a year ago in Denver. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him and Sean Payton. But Justin Fields is now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's going to provide depth, he's going to provide confidence, and he's going to get the chance to grow in a new offensive system with a franchise that prides itself on stability. I think that Justin Fields is going to benefit tremendously from this, even though he doesn't start. Let's say the Steelers just say, listen, we want to sit you for a year to kind of wash away all those bad habits that you developed over the years, right, while being in Chicago and not really having the supporting staff and not really having the core coaching to get him up to his level of play of where he could be as a bona fide NFL starter. But I think this is great. I think this is awesome for Justin Fields. I think it's great for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they're going to continue to develop and continue to go ahead and sign guys and try and see if they can maybe get some guys in the draft to aid their course in the on the defensive side of the football, just as well as the offensive side of the football. So again, Justin Fields getting traded, to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is going to be for a 2025 6th-round pick that can go up to a 4th-round pick, depending on how much he plays this upcoming NFL season in 2024. Breaking news again, Justin Fields gone from the Chicago Bears to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This all but guarantees that Caleb Williams will be the #1 overall pick for the Chicago Bears It will only be right. We'll see what happens, but that's what I'm anticipating. And I think the pundits out there, on all of the scouts out there, and pretty much everyone and their grandmother who is out there is thinking the same. Free agency wave one. Well, I just want to start a new segment live right here on Real Talk Sports. This is something that I want to do for every single division in the NFC and every single division in the AFC. I want to take a look at the free agency trackers starting this weekend right now with my Philadelphia Eagles beginning this list, who I feel deserves an A plus for what they have done so far in free agency. You take a look at the signings that I mentioned at the top of the week here. Saquon Barkley obviously signing to my Philadelphia Eagles. That was huge. We talked about Bryce Huff and what his potential impact will be upon arriving on a 3-year deal worth $51 million. And Brandon Graham, of course, being retained for his 15th season. I think, again, with what we already have in the building, we talk about the veteran leadership. As I just mentioned, Brandon Graham is still around 15th season. We still have Lane Johnson and a core of other players that are now being heard and are now being viewed as leaders, both in the locker room and off the field. We think about A.J. Brown. We think about, of course, Jalen Hurts. You think about Devontae Smith on the offensive side of football, and now on the defensive side of football. Who is going to emerge and being that voice for Fletcher Cox? Maybe not vocally, but what he does in terms of trench play on the field. I think this is going to be really, really big for us now, going deeper into the free agency period. Wave 2 soon to commence as early as next week. Let's talk about a couple pickups that we did not speak about. Only those guys getting signed later on in the week. My first one up top, CJ yes, is back. The green mask, ski mask wearing, thuggish of the back end of the secondary. He brings that attitude. He brings that high impact play value right there that we love in Philadelphia. And he just brings that dog-like mentality, right? Why I call him a thug is because he's a banger in the middle. He's going to make sure that anyone who crosses him pays a price and not just gets away freely. A bit of an injury history as of late. I'm not overly concerned with the injury. He missed a lot of games for the Detroit Lions a year ago. He only signed a 1-year deal with them towards pectoral muscle and was only able to come back later on inside of the playoffs. But still, everything that he was able to accomplish while he was in Philadelphia just shows that he was meant to play for us. It's just unfortunate that we couldn't get a deal done earlier. And sometimes those things happen. The NFL is a business, as we know. So at the end of the day, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, again, coming back to Philadelphia on a 3-year deal worth $33 million. He said it himself that he was in his feelings. There were some exchanges here with the Philadelphia faithful. Some of the fans, some of the media members as well in Philadelphia were knocking on this guy a lot, just in terms of him not being able to get signed back to Philly. And I think it was a two-way street. It's not just Chauncey Gardner-Johnson that was in his feelings, but I also believe that Philadelphia Eagles fan base was in their feelings too, because we fell in love with this player and he made so many plays for us. Huge impact in his 1 year when we went to the Super Bowl, no less. When he came over, at the time, I think he had 6 games with consecutive interceptions in those games. So we're looking to get some of that playmaking ability back. This is what we were missing last season. And I know that this is also a redemption signing for Howie Roseman, who let him walk in free agency only for him to settle in Detroit as he tried to go out there and establish the culture changes that he made when he was with us a season prior to last. And I think that he's going to continue to play this way. The energy that he's going to get from the fan base, the energy he's going to get from being back home right here in Philadelphia, I think is going to be huge for us. Again, a 3-year deal worth up to $33 million. I also want to talk about Devontae Parker. Look, Devontae Parker, for what it's worth, has not been the star that a lot of people thought he was going to be when he was drafted years ago. But this provides us a depth piece. He's also a camp body that can come in and compete for the WR3 or WR4 spot. So I love what Howie Roseman is doing, loading up on veterans that can still play, maybe got a little bit of length in the tooth, but still play and cause an impact. Remember, just a year ago, we had Julio Jones, a long-standing veteran, a future Hall of Famer who was on our team. I'm seeing Devontae Parker possibly complement that position that he was in a year ago. I think that Devontae Parker can try to maybe get that WR4 spot if we don't draft a slot guy to come in and compete. But he's still a big body, 6'3", 215 pounds. This guy's going to definitely make an impact, and we'll see if he can stay healthy and help us later on down the line, because as we know, injuries do pile up in the NFL. I also want to talk about Matt Hennessy, who we got over from Atlanta. I think this is another tremendous depth piece for us. a guy who's missed a couple of years with injuries and so things of that nature. Last season, he had a knee injury, was unable to come in for the season. But I think this is a low risk, high reward signing for us, simply due to the fact that we're always going to invest in the trenches. That's what we're built on. The offensive and defensive line, making sure that we have enough value, making sure that we have enough pieces there to be able to be competitive, and also maybe even have a piece or two that could be interchangeable parts. When you talk about playing on the inside of the offensive line or the outside of the offensive line, we had that with Sua Opeta, and we also had that with Jack Driscoll. Both players are now going to be testing the free agency market to see where they can land, if they can get that big money deal that they've been always looking for since they came into the NFL. All best to them. We're also talking about Zach Bond, who I believe is going to be a special teams asset for us. Maybe in the competition for as a rotational player in the new Vic Fangio defensive scheme. We're going to need guys to come in and be able to provide different looks. And I think that's what Zach Bond does right now. This point in his career, 27 years old, been around for a little bit, was with the Saints. The Saints drafted him to be an impact player. He never really grew into that role, and it's unfortunately for him. We're hoping that he does with us, at least as a rotational player, maybe even a depth piece. Zach Bond, another free agency pickup for us. And again, Kenny Pickett getting traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers to my very own Philadelphia Eagles. And what I like about this pick, if you think about what we have done in the past, and I spoke to my broadcast colleague, Brother Prime, who I'm going to be having on this podcast fairly, very, very soon. We're just working out and ironing out the details. But shout out to Brother Prime, and he made a very interesting point to let me know that this Kenny Pickett signing can actually be a blessing in disguise. If you think about the history of the Philadelphia Eagles, think about what we were always able to do. We always complimented our starter with an adequate, if not just above average, backup quarterback. Donovan McNabb. Michael Vick came into the fold. McNabb was moved to Washington. Vick took over. Vick was the starter. Chip Kelly came in. Nick Foles was there. Nick Foles became the starter. Nick Foles, then we had Sam Bradford via trade by Minnesota. Minnesota, it didn't work out for us. Well, with Sam Bradford, unfortunately. So we traded for him from the Rams and then traded him to Minnesota. Sam Bradford we did. And then Carson Wentz was obviously drafted to be his higher apparent replacement. And then Carson Wentz, with the injury history and everything else that unfolded there, we went ahead and we drafted Jalen Hurts to replace him. And now Jalen Hurts is our starter. So again, you look at the history of what we were able to do. Every single time we've had a starting quarterback, we invested heavily in the quarterback position. It is the most important position in all of football. You could never ever discount having quality backup play, especially if you're trying to contend, you're trying to make moves and going to battle for a world championship. And I respect this move. I hope it works out for Kenny Pickett. I hope it works out for us as well, too, because if I know anything about Howie Roseman, he's always going to squeeze the value out of the players and try to maybe get some assets further on down the line. You could never discount having enough backup quarterbacks or just quality piece quarterbacks that you could use either as a bridge guy and bringing in a young guy to mentor. You look at the situation in Pittsburgh that we just mentioned at the top of the pod. We talked about Russell Wilson being over there now, and then Justin Fields challenging him for that starting position. So look for us to have a similar traits when it comes to the quarterback positions and how we're going to adjust the competition, how we're going to adjust the backup responsibilities of the quarterback position. I think this is a really good situation for a young guy to get away from a situation that wasn't the best for him. Maybe he'll grow. And just to add a little side note, Kenny Pickett, as a kid, was a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan, born in New Jersey. So we always celebrated the Eagles with his friends and family. And this is good for him. I think it's good for the team, and it's great for our quarterback room. Moving on, the New York Giants. I'm going to give them a B+ on their grade for the free agency that they had. First and foremost, I want to mention the trade from the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers went ahead and traded the Giants and got a second-round pick in this year's NFL draft, a fifth-round pick in 2025. The Panthers will also send their fifth-round pick to the Giants for the Giants' fifth-round pick this year in the NFL draft for 2024 later in April. I want to talk about Brian Burns' deal just a little bit. So it's a 5-year, $150 million deal. 87.5 of it is guaranteed. There is a little bit of concern just because, again, He's still a very young and undiscovered player. When you play in the NFC South for so long, you get familiar with the talent that's around you, get familiar with the competition that's around you. Can he make that transition from the NFC South now to the NFC East, where it's a bit more physical? The talent is spread tremendously across the board. You look in Philadelphia with our skill players. We have Saquon Barkley there. We're going to look to add more depth in the running back room as well. Receivers, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. You look at the Dallas Cowboys with them, C.D. Lamb, Brandon Cooks is still over there. They're going to continue to load up there. And I also like that young tight end that they have as well in Dallas. So there's a lot of different pieces. Don't forget the Washington Commanders. They're continuing to build. We're going to mention them in a bit. They have also, they still have the services of, I believe his name is, pardon me, I'm not too super familiar with the Commanders' roster, but I know that Terry McLaurin is over there. Jahan Dotson, that was the name I was looking for. Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin. They retained Chris Rodriguez. He's going to be back, as well as Brian Robinson Jr., but we'll get into the depth there. What the Giants have done so far with Brian Burns, they've committed to a young player, and they're going to continue to build around the young core guys that they got over there. It's unfortunate they weren't able to retain Xavier McKinney. He got the big money deal in Green Bay, as I mentioned in my 2 episodes prior to this one. So he's not there anymore. But the Giants loaded up and invested heavily in the defensive side of the football. You take a look at Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau is still there as well. And they also re-signed their cornerback McLeod. He's going to be back for another year. I really like what they've done on the defensive side of the football. They need to continue to bring in assets on the defense, especially on the back end. They went ahead and they signed Jalen Mills, formerly of my Philadelphia Eagles. He'll challenge for a starting position. We'll see how everything falls out when it comes to that. But Brian Burns, the big money getter, 5 years, $150 million, 87.5 of it is guaranteed. Jalen Mills coming over on a 1-year deal. It might be something that he'll be having to compete for in terms of starting role, but still he brings a lot of experience, a Super Bowl championship with him, again, with my Philadelphia Eagles. So he's going to be able to be that voice in the locker room for the younger guys who they're trying to bring up. They also added Drew Lock, formerly of the Seattle Seahawks. He was traded a couple of years back for Russell Wilson, who went to Denver, now is with Pittsburgh. He's coming in on a 1-year deal to compete for a backup role behind Daniel Jones. They still have Tommy Cutlets over there, so they're going to look for compete for the second string quarterback role. Coming in this September. If Danny Dimes is not healthy before the season starts, expect there to be a competition for the starter's role until he is. Devin Singletary signed a 3-year deal with the Giants for $16.5 million, and it can go up to as much as 19.5 with incentives. What they get out of him is the familiarity with Brian Daboll as well as Joe Scone, their general manager. Both of them have their history with this player. He's a very solid back, a guy who has rushed for consecutive 800-plus yard seasons with the Buffalo Bills and as well as the Houston Texans. The Texans lose Singletary, but the Giants gain a solid running back who can provide depth and as well as mentorship for a young guy that they're looking to bring in either via the draft or by free agency. But I think all the free agents, solid free agency, young backs and stout backs are all gone. So look for them to load up in the draft as well. Moving on, the Washington Commanders. I give the Commanders a C+ for their free agency so far. Most notable signing in free agency, Austin Eckler, who signs a 2-year deal worth $11.45 million. The running back depth chart right now looks as follows. They have Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson Jr., and Chris Rodriguez, as I mentioned earlier. This is going to be a solid running back by committee approach. I think Brian Robinson is going to be their lead bell cow, and then you'll have Eckler as a change of pace back with someone who can also catch the football out of the backfield and make a lot of plays in the middle of the field. He brings the versatility, again, very, very good pass catcher. His production did dip a year ago, but, I mean, there was injuries across the board. You're talking about an offensive line, the quarterback position, a wide receiver position, and a running back position. All positions on the offensive side of the football for the Chargers suffered tremendous losses because of the injuries that they've had. You take a look at what there's like an exodus going on over there on the reshaping and the remolding of what Chargers football is going to look like this season. When you take a look at Austin Eckler, and as well as Chris Williams, who was released, Mike Williams, who was released because of the large cap hit. And you also look at Keenan Allen, who's no longer there as well. More on him on another pod as he was traded to the Chicago Bears. And we're going to get into the Chicago Bears in depth on our next episode as we go to the NFC North. But right now, we're in the NFC East, and that is where we'll stay for today. Again, Washington Commanders signing Austin Eckler. They're also bringing in veteran Bobby Wagner. What they get with Bobby Wagner is a future Hall of Famer, a leader, and an elite communicator on the defensive side of football, someone who knows Dan Quinn, really, really well, and will help the younger guys transition into this defensive scheme. He'll also be able to cover to help in a position of need. They're going to need linebackers as well, and this is what he does best: a tremendous backer, a tremendous player. And I feel like he still is able to play at a really high level at the age that he's at right now. When you take a look at everything else that they have, he's 34 years old, so they're a little bit long in the tooth, but I still feel like he'll be able to contribute, even though they'll probably go ahead and add somebody via the draft or add maybe someone during free agency. You got Marcus Mariota, who signs a one-year deal to back up whomever they draft. As we know, Sam Howell was also traded. He's now gone to Seattle to back up Geno Smith. But why I like this for Marcus is because now he's not in a position where he feels like, I know I'm not going to compete for a starting job. And maybe he can help a veteran along. His deal is only for $6 million. If he gets to play, he might make 10. But we'll just watch how this thing plays out. I think they're going to draft a quarterback with the number 2 overall pick. A lot of people are saying Jaden Daniels. I am as well. Zach Ertz, formerly of my Philadelphia Eagles, right there, catching the touchdown pass on my wall. Zach Ertz signs a one-year deal worth $5 million. What they get out of Zach Ertz is a veteran who is capable to not only catch the football, but open up the offense, any offense that they have. And I think it's a really good signing for them for 2 reasons. One, they didn't have any pass catchers prior to signing him. So he gets to come in right away and compete and start if they don't go ahead and prioritize drafting a place and potentially bringing in somebody to go ahead and challenge for the spot. And what they also get is a guy that worked with the new offensive coordinator when he was a head coach in Cliff Kingsbury. Cliff Kingsbury was had Zach Ertz when they traded him from the Philadelphia Eagles. And then now he gets a chance to come in the Kingsbury system and kind of move things along again offensively. You go and you sign a Bobby Wagner, who's been a Super Bowl champion. You sign Zach Ertz, who is also a Super Bowl champion. 2 guys who are a little bit older right now in the league, but they can still contribute from a leadership standpoint and also from a scheme and a transitional standpoint for some of the younger guys and the rest of the core pieces on both sides of the football. Zach Ertz for the offense and Bobby Wagner for the defense. Another honorable mention, continuing on for the Washington Commanders, Dante Fowler Jr., a rotational and depth piece. Tremendous piece there, addition. I'm also very familiar with Dan Quinn. You talk about Frankie Louvu, who had a tremendous season in Carolina. He did extremely well in his replacement of Shaq Thompson. I think he's going to be a really good player for them. Signed a 3-year deal already worth $36 million. Expect him to start alongside Jamin Davis. I think this is a really good pairing. They have 2 young linebackers, and they need pieces there. Again, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and now Jamin Davis. We don't know how that's going to look like in camp. They might all play. They may not. But at least they're starting to beef up in the linebacking position, in which it was a position of need. They also have center Brian Biadish, who is a depth piece, I believe, who can probably push us to be a starter, right? They drafted Ricky Stromberg in the 3rd round last year, expected him to come along, but he's only had 24 snaps, and most of those snaps were at the guard position. Will he battle for a starter's role? We have yet to see. And I like what Biadish brings to the table. A lot of veteran leadership. He's been around and he's done his job, and he's had the versatility to play both at the center and at the guard position. They also signed Dorrance Armstrong, who comes over again, another Dan Quinn player from the Dallas Cowboys, not Seattle Seahawks. He played tremendously well in the last 2 seasons. Under Quinn has 16 sacks and is a player who's a rotational piece, and maybe now get an opportunity to finally start and show what he can do in a starter's role. We have yet to see if that's going to be a position that they're going to improve on, but I think that is something to look forward to, especially for him now being in Washington in a reset situation, no longer being with the Dallas Cowboys. Speaking of which, the Dallas Cowboys, I'm going to give them a D so far after the first wave of free agency, specifically because they didn't do much. We all know Jerry Jones with the big proclamation that they're going to be all in this season. A lot of people scrutinizing that talk about, the Dallas Cowboys going over and forking up so much money. I don't know if this is going to be a good thing for the Dallas Cowboys because, again, they have a lot of contracts looming. Dak Prescott looking for that extension already right now, and some legal issues. We don't know much on that yet. We might revisit as the situation grows, but they have Dak to take care of. They have CeeDee Lamb, who's going to be due for a big deal, and Micah Parsons. These are all things that we really need to keep a close eye on to see how it all plays out. The Dallas Cowboys have released Leighton Vander Esch and Michael Gallup, two former pieces that they thought was going to really help them get them to a championship. But unfortunately, they did not, and they're no longer going to be with the team. Tyron Smith has signed with the New York Jets after being let go and mutually agreeing to part ways. Longtime veteran and all-pro, a guy who will also push one day to be a Hall of Famer. And I think that's going to be it for them. Just a quick note on their free agent signings. They went ahead and they added Eric Kendricks as a linebacker, and they retained Jordan Lewis. Again, Lewis had some injury issues with the foot, and it lingered a bit from 2022 going into 2023. So we'll see what happens there. But it's only a one-year deal. They really like him. He's homegrown talent, and I think that's a great signing for them. So again, the Giants get a B+ from me. The Washington Commanders definitely I'll give them a C+. The Dallas Cowboys get a D, and my Philadelphia Eagles definitely get an A+ for their free agent additions and what they have been able to do in the early wave of free agency, wave one. Now, news and what's good? What's good? Devin White signing with my Philadelphia Eagles on a one-year deal worth $7.5 million. What this means right now for us is that we are serious about investing into the linebacker position, a position that's been neglected for far too long since Jeremiah Trotter no longer plays for our franchise. This is something that I feel we needed. It also gives Nakobe Dean a running mate and a potential guy to battle out in camp with. We don't know how things are going to shake out. Remember, I mentioned earlier on that Zach Bond was brought over from the New Orleans Saints to provide depth at the position, maybe even challenge for rotational reps along with those two linebackers in Devin White and Nakobe Dean. But I still feel like we're going to load up at the linebacker position. I still also feel like we should draft and get younger, as Harry Roseman mentioned several times throughout his presser at the end of the season in 2024. But I think this is a huge deal for us. Why? Because Devin White brings the experience that you want out of a linebacker, right? Again, played at a high level for a long time. Last couple of years have been the drop-offs, particularly in the coverage game. He shared a lot of his reps with other linebackers. So unfortunately, we didn't get the best out of him, but I feel like he could still play at a really high level. A guy who maybe a change of scenery will do a lot of good. So here's hoping that Devin White is able to reclaim some of that elite play that he came in with in 2019, 2020, and 2021. Last couple of years have been marred with different injuries all over the place. But Devin White, I believe, can still be a major contributor. And who knows, if this works out for the year, maybe Philly wants to restructure and add a couple more years on a deal potentially. We don't know how it's going to look like, but I'm praying and I'm hoping that he's still got some of that juice left in the tank. You see the type of player that he is. You see the excitement that he brings to a defense. I'm excited to have this guy on my defense. I'm excited. Not only sacked Dak Prescott, but he went ahead and sacked Cooper Rush too. This guy is tremendous, and he'll be a perfect fit for Vic Fangio if he's healthy and he gets that clean bill of health from the medical professionals that the Eagles have. But I'm excited for Devin White. I think this is a huge move, and big shout out to him. Big shout out to Harry Roseman. He's continuing to show a master class in the free agency period, very early. I'm excited for this new addition. I'm excited for our defense, and I'm just excited overall for the NFL season. Can't wait for it to get started. Now, before we go, I got to give a few huge shout-outs to a couple of kids that I have been blessed to know, blessed to watch come up in their games individually, and now they will be going from the north into the south. My guy, Caden Dewey Hall, Jaden Michelle, Jamie Theodore, all hailing from Montreal, Quebec, Canada, will get an opportunity to go to the U.S. and play for Baylor School. That's right, Baylor School, high school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, will be getting some of the most talented young men in their positions. I think that they're going to electrify wherever they are. I've watched Caden, Jaden, and Jamie very closely for years. These kids have always they've always performed at a high level. Flight football alums, watched them from E-High all the way to where they are right now. Have always played with a very high level of competition and have done tremendous overall throughout the years. Got to give a shout out to my guys, Jamel Springer, as well as Jean-Marc Michel, the fathers of two of the boys mentioned in Caden Dewey Hall, and as well as Jaden Michel. Both boys, awesome pedigree, awesome work ethic, just looking for them to continue to do the amazing thing. Look at this return from Caden right here. I was actually on the sideline. I witnessed this. This kid is fantastic. And if you don't put a helmet on him, he'll get away from you, just like he did right here. Put everyone in a blender, and they came out chopped up and sweet. Golly. That's Caden, man. He'll do that. Don't let him touch that football, especially in the return game. He'll take it to the house every single time. And we're going to watch this one right here again before I flip the screen and show you Jaden Michelle. And when we're talking about Jaden Michelle, we're talking about a future stout defensive lineman who will definitely play on Sundays. You got the size already, 6'5", 6'4", 245 pounds, can easily balloon up to 255 pounds and still play at a really, 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 really high level. Jaden Michelle, tremendous asset for Baylor School. I hope they know what they're getting in this young man. This is a kid with a tremendous pedigree, also very bright, high GPA average. He's going to come in right away and contribute wherever you put him. I think he's even a surprise player from a tight end perspective. So this is a player as well that's going to give a lot of room. It's going to allow for a lot of people to see what he can do. Very versatile, going to the States. Who knows? Maybe he'll develop into an awesome tight end, which is the position I know for sure he always wanted to play. As a defensive lineman, you get size, you get length, and you just get that nasty, nasty mentality, that dog-like mentality that you like from your interior play inside the trenches. Jaden brings all of that and a punch like no other. What I also like about him is that he's a very a good run stuffer, right? So he knows how to get through those small creases and just muscle out his guy and still be able to make a play in the backfield. Even if he doesn't get to the body, he affects the game so much so that his teammates will always be able to eat. So he's an awesome contributor on the defensive side of football. And again, like I mentioned, a player that can easily transition to go on to the offensive side of football, decent size, a large catch radius, soft hands for a big man his size. I would love to see him, how he would get even in the run game if we were ever to get flipped to being a tight end. But again, I like him as a defensive lineman. I think this is where his strong suit is. You see him push the pocket right there, and everything just goes down. That's Jaden Michelle out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, another Dalbe Vio product. Let's take a look at my guy again, Jamian Theodore, another player who went to the States. Actually, he was there already. He was in Ohio for a little bit. I know he went to a school out in Ohio, but now he's going to transfer over to Baylor School to rejoin his football brothers and make the most of his young and budding career. You see him right here making a tremendous play, the breakaway speed, contested catches. This kid has a high intelligence level, football intelligence level, and a classroom intelligence level, like the other two. 75-yard touchdown, catch and go right here. You like to see that speed, but you also like to see that savvy, right? The edge out he brings to the table is that he's a very, very smart football player, knows where to put himself, fits into the little spaces, knows how to sit, catch the ball, turn, and spin on a dime, and be able to score on a dime, as you just seen right here. Here we have a 95-yard kickoff return, and it was a touchdown. Little burst, little trickery right there. But Jamin Theodore, that breakaway speed, that niftiness, that shiftiness, you don't get this regular all the time. And I know the saying is you get a receiver, it comes a dime a dozen, but not when it comes to this kid, not when it comes to Jaden Michelle, and not when it comes to Caden Dewey Hall. These kids were brought up right. They're all about their business. They're all about the game of football, and I cannot wait to see what they bring to the table. But that's going to be it for now. Big shout out again to Jaden Michelle, Caden Dewey Hall, and Jamian Theodore. All the best in your new endeavors, guys. Much love, peace, and love. Like I signed in, I'm about to sign out. This is Real Talk Sports. I'm Htheman. And like I always say, peace and love always.